amplified pattern recognition.
Why does the universe exist? We're about 5 light signs away from the answer.
Welcome to Think Tank. This is a podcast where in each episode we pick a topic and then we discuss it with industry professionals and thought leaders in that industry. I'm Josh Gonzalez.
And I'm Braeden Drew. And we're your hosts of Think Tank. This is episode 7, where we'll be discussing virtual reality filmmaking. We have 3 guests here today who are all virtual reality filmmakers. We have Kwame, Renan, and Ellie. Renan and Kwame are from Outpost VR, where they work in 360 film production.
We also have Ellie, who's the creator of IMU from Cinehackers, which is available in the Oculus store on the Gear VR. I encourage you to check it out. It's a really different kind of VR experience. Instead of using 360-degree cameras, he mounted the camera onto the actor's head so you can watch the film through the eyes of one of the characters. It's really different and really cool. This episode was recorded in the Allen Slate Radio Institute in Toronto. Let's get right into it. So why don't you guys explain what you guys do with Outpost?
So with Outpost right now, it kind of started in the transmedia zone as a research and development project, trying to figure out what VR was, what 360 video is, and we're all sort of in this phase. And Kwame was also in the transmedia zone, and so we kind of linked up and realized we had similar visions and just started making content. And so we've been doing a lot of advertising and 360 video in that realm, but this is still progressing towards what we feel is going to be the future of media. And so we're trying new things all the time, and it's still very heavily research and development based, but you also got to pay the bills.
Definitely. I think that's great, doing R&D work. That's pretty much where everyone is right now. When you're doing an experience, it's pretty much just research, how are we actually going to do this? And then you have a hypothesis, this might work, go out and produce it. Okay, this worked, this didn't. And so, what have you guys found that actually works so far? What has worked for you?
Well, we found a lot of things that don't work, and a lot of things you have to work around. So that's tough to answer. I mean, there's different techniques that for sure work. When you're filming with GoPros, there's a certain procedure that will get you the ideal final result. But every single project introduces new challenges. It's never the same.
Yeah, I mean, from lighting to, but one thing what I think is interesting is we kind of set what we thought were long-term goals. So we knew that we had different skills. We have CG, and we were well, we're really interested in 360 video. And we learned a lot in that area, whether it's lighting or where placement or how the final result, where you place something and how people will engage or how you can work with it after. But we had, for example, our CG guy, and we're one day we knew we wanted to deal with interactivity. We knew that we saw this blending of CG and actual film or video. And it's just things are moving so fast that we're oh, now we're there. We're actually, so we're doing tests in that realm, and I think it's just interesting how fast that came.
Yeah.
So what kind of interactivity are you guys working with?
Kind of what we originally started with in the Choose Your Own Adventure sort of domain. I don't know if you've seen the Taylor Swift Emmy award-winning app, I guess. But basically, you move from room to room, looking at the doors, and the doors have glow around them to kind of visually show you that that's a hotspot. And so that basic interaction is the underbelly of the Choose Your Own Adventure style thing. So just regular visual interaction, looking at something, having some sort of cue that's a hotspot or whatever, and then moving forward to another scene. So that's one way I think is really accessible to tell an interactive story in that experience, where you can choose to move forward if you want, or you can stay where you are.
So multiple endings and plots.
That's kind of the logical end result of it, but it could also just be a linear story.
And different scenes in different rooms. So it's kind of blending a game, the narrative of a game, and a film. So it's just getting that live action for the game.
Yeah, I think a lot of VR, at least now, is going to be basically cutscenes from a video game. Or imagine The Walking Dead, if you've ever played that, where it's a story. You're not really playing much of a game. Like the bulk of it is the narrative, but there is that interactivity in it. And with VR, like you're in it. You have the presence of being there. So that's what sets it apart.
I would also want to say to that there's a lot of value in doing things simple. And so I think what you just said, like for example, the multiple endings, it's like you could still prove your concept, but like keeping it toned. And so I mean I'm a big believer in that, and I think, that's how you ensure that a project's going to freaking get done, So
like your interactivity, I'm sure, is a little bit different than with what Ellie's doing. Do you want to explain your kind of situation?
Sure. So we approached VR in the sense that how do you tell a story in 360? That was our initial problem. What we came up with is that it's really difficult to do that. So we came up with a technique where we shoot only with 2 cameras, not with a six rig. We shoot in 3D, so we get the stereo, which is a lot of people like because it gives depth. But the technique we came up with is that we built a rig that allows us to track where the cameras are looking. So essentially, you wear the rig on the actor's head, and you capture the positional data. And in that sense, when you play back the film with the positional data, it moves in 3D space. Did I explain that correctly?
Yeah, so you're basically following the character's eyes as if you're looking through their eyes. If they're looking to the right, you have to follow them.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the problems we thought when we were watching 360 videos on YouTube right now. There's just so much going on. You're just panning around the screen trying to look at everything that's happening. It's hard to see where the focal point is in the storytelling, so that's probably a way to get around what you want to direct the viewer's attention to.
Yeah, because there's a lot of talk now about agency, which is giving the who has control. So in VR, the viewer has control in a 360 video, but the director loses that control. So we thought, how does the director maintain that control? And we thought this would be a good way to do it. It's just a little bit time intensive because all the action needs to be choreographed because the actors are essentially the camera. But if it's done, we worked really hard to do it correctly in our short, and I think it comes across really well. But I think, Josh and I have had conversations. I think there's a way of integrating 360 into the mix, like maybe setting up like a 360 as an establishing shot, like where the room is or where the setting is, and then going into this first person narrative. And I think that's still valid. And we've had comments from people saying, I'd love to be that other person, just another person in the room. So when we were developing our film, we didn't have a I/O or a touch device that allowed people to switch. But with the Gear VR coming out, there is that touchpad on the side, so that could be an input device that we could use.
Yeah, so would that be more interactive where, again, with the agency, you're giving the viewer the control to switch, or would it be, more linearly where, at this point in the film, you're going to switch, just switching shots?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think there would be periods where the viewer could switch because you can't, it would be pretty impossible to be able to switch at any point because it wouldn't be seamless. But I think there would be moments like where Braeden and Kwame are coming up with where you'd get to move to the next room. So there's another idea of doing it that way.
So more like a certain shot where this is an action-packed scene. Having the 360 there isn't going to be a problem because you're not having dialogue or certain aspects of the plot that are integral to the story that the director needs you to focus on. So it's better just to have that kind of 360 angle shot for when it's just whatever you want to look at, you can experience.
Yeah, I also think the idea of jam-packing the 360 space with story is not necessarily the best way to go. And I understand the sentiment behind it. But really, at the end of the day, when we live our experiences, things happen and then there's no going back. I'm experiencing this in front of me, and what's behind me is never a part of my memories or whatever. And so that doesn't really happen if everything is constantly around you in a 360 space. You have to follow one sort of story, and if there are other stories there, then you can watch it again and view another way. But I think also it comes to the viewer to realize that I don't have to look everywhere at the same time. I can look wherever and follow one thing.
Yeah. When you think of going to the movie theaters now or watching a movie now, you're sitting on a chair that doesn't usually move. It's usually just straight ahead, and a lot of the action actually happens in front of you. Not much actually goes on behind. You can maybe hide some stuff, but I think even in 360 film, if you have a focal point, this is the front, not so much as in the back. I don't think people really need to be like turning around all the time.
Yeah, or if you're watching it on a plane.
Exactly.
You can't turn around.
I'd be really curious to see if you could put this is a weird idea, but put the crew in the back and then focus the action like it's playing out in front of you.
And get the 180.
And
so
get the 180.
Stops it, yeah.
But if you look behind you, you'll have the crew behind you just shooting.
Yeah.
So that'd be great for like, live studio audiences. I think who's doing that right now? There's one late
CNN?
night.
Oh,
no,
no.
one late night
Conan?
doing it. Conan's doing it. Yeah, Conan's doing it with Next VR maybe. Do you know the company?
Yeah, Next VR or John, one of those.
Next VR definitely does live broadcast.
Yeah.
That's cool. What do you guys think about like streaming this live content? I mean, obviously it's resource intensive, but like, what do you think that really means? Does it mean people are just gonna be at home with these headsets on, experiencing these things, or is it just as live TV is now? It just kind of augments what's going on.
I think it's it's just another cool way to engage with a production. In that case, it gets you front row tickets. So if it's a ball game or something, then I get that, and it'll sell. So at Outpost VR, we're about like, who wants to give us money, and then we can do some creative, awesome other things, or we inject our creativity into that thing that's going to make us money. Just, I come from a starving artist history, so now I'm like, nah, that's no fun.
Producer mindset.
Sell out early.
Yeah, but you can still be an artist and make money. Those are the real artists.
So on that, going back to that, I'm not going to argue with that.
That's pretty wrong.
Starving, yo. But yeah, going back to that though, I'm just saying like, it's clearly it's a simple model. It's not like the most awesome thing. Someone's going to build on that and do something that's like, oh shoot, that's the next level. But for now, that's a really cool way to integrate it fast.
Yeah, and with it, it's like just like 360 VR. Like, what's next? I don't know.
So there's no real status quo right now in the VR world. Everything is basically possible.
Yeah, no, it's the Wild West of VR right now. I think everyone can really agree on that. Everyone's just making their own processes and content. Where with film right now, there's a pretty standard way of doing things, but I think that's really changing.
I just wanted to say I participated in 2 VR film festivals in Toronto, one called Fivers and the other one called Kaleidoscope. And when I was talking because I was demoing our film there, and I was talking to people, and they're like, every piece of content is so different. It's so vastly different in terms of quality, in terms of story, in terms of how people are approaching it. So, I mean, that's really exciting. So definitely the Wild West.
Yeah, do you think we'll reach a standard where it's like, okay, right now there's a standard kind of camera set, but even then it's still not standard. Everyone's still doing it their own way, but this is vastly different. Some people are using GoPros, some people are using pre-stitched cameras, some people are using head-mounted stuff like you. Like, there's just different ways of doing it. Will we reach a standard where like, okay, now the headset stuff that you're doing, is that going to be like the new over-the-shoulder shot? Will that just be like the first-person shot? And will people just kind of start using this as a template for like all films, and they all kind of look the same?
I think that falls into a discussion of, I guess, VR as a whole, and specifically VR genres. Because with video games, you have first-person shooters, which are completely different than like real-time strategy games or MMORPGs or whatever. They're their own genre that evolved and developed into what they are today. So similarly, I think VR is going to have different genres. So you'll have something similar to Ellie's production, which broke history. And just like, well, it really, like, it blew my mind when I saw it, because I was like, this is totally a thing that you can do in VR that I never thought you could do. And so maybe that will evolve into its own genre of POV stuff, and then the 360 is going to evolve into its own genre, and then maybe the immersive, real, fourth dimensional, whatever it's called now, it's types of experiences will evolve into its own genre. And so I don't know, but I think, yeah, it will have a set something for that specific genre.
Yeah, but I mean, even VR now has, like you said, different levels. Like there's just like something like the Gear VR where it's a seated experience, and maybe there's a touchpad or something, but then there are these holistic VR experiences like the Void where you're walking around, you can feel stuff, maybe you get some smells there. but I think it's going to be totally different. It's just the medium, and it can evolve in different ways, I assume.
But even as far as you were talking interactivity, like you're talking about the touchpad or what we were talking about in terms of whether it's looking at something, that's a part of the exploration that's pretty new. I think the actual Oculus menu did a good job of actually saying, like, here's one way and it works. People pick it up pretty fast, but there's no standard there.
Yeah, because it's still pretty flat. It's still like kind of this new age web design, but will it be more skeuomorphic, where when you want to see a movie, you reach into like your virtual drawer, pull out a virtual like DVD, maybe because people want to relive those moments, put it in, or is it going to be kind of like the web and just now 360?
Yeah, well, that didn't work for Apple.
Yeah.
They ditched the skeuomorphism really early, and I think that's just because people are used to seeing something one way. But where it's going to go, like we'll have menus that pop up in like a heads-up display that will just be in our field of vision, and that doesn't exist in real life. So why try to replicate something that...
So more of like a Minority Report, futuristic kind of menu.
And I think when we learn, it's one of those things like the internet itself, where we couldn't imagine the stuff that we do now and how fast we do things and access information and interact the ways that we would. Like, remember when touchpads were brand new, like touch screens, and everything was clunky because we were still on the old way of doing things? They're like, no, you don't have a mouse. And now it's, we've sorted that out. And I think that's what Renan is talking about in terms of like those ways of navigating and so forth.
I think like everything, when it's like the technology comes out and then the platforms in which people use it proceed after it comes out. Like when you take drones, they came out, was it just going to be a toy? Is it now going to be a huge tool for filmmaking? And now there's not a commercial on TV right now where they don't use drones and other automatic forms of transferring the camera without you just having the cameraman moving anymore, so you can gain things at more speed, have different angles. And I think with VR, that's where it's going to go. It's just going to become a new tool that people are going to just have on their belt to use.
I don't really think like regular film's going to just go away. Like, are paintings gone away? I think it's just going to be another thing. Whenever I hear people say, oh my God, this is going to replace film, it's not going to replace anything. It's just going to be another medium, because it might be better to tell a story with regular filmmaking techniques than it is for 360. It just is.
I hear the other argument is VR here to stay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Way more than often.
That too, yeah.
Is it?
What do you hear?
Well, is it going to be like 3D? Is it going to disappear? Is the technology going to fail
to the standards?
Well, do people want to wear? Sorry, do people want to wear head-mounted displays? Like all those issues.
It's all about adoption.
What you just said, it was going along the lines of what I was thinking, which is, how long is the ideal experience in your eyes? I mean, is it 15 hours? Is it 2 minutes? That's what I want to ask, because that's the difference in this format. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's ideally what's in my mind. I'll say it after, but I'm curious what you guys think.
I'd say the shorter experiences are better for me. I just think it's very light intensive, and if I had to sit on, like just me personally, if I had to have that goggle on and watch a full movie for like 2 hours, it would definitely be very intensive, and I probably couldn't do it all the time. I feel like shorter is definitely the way to go. That's just with the technology that exists now. I'm not saying it won't get better, but there's definitely limitations in terms of like health-wise. We don't really know what it's doing to our eyes and our brain. It's like direct light right into our receptors. So,
but these are some things people were concerned of when television or even radio came along. I think we'll figure this out 2 years after it's a consumer product and they can actually...
That's how it goes with anything, though.
Do research, yeah. But like, I don't know, have you guys used the Oculus Video App where you're sitting in a theater? Have you guys watched a full movie on that yet? And what was the experience like for that?
I love it. I do it all the time. I watch Netflix on my Gear VR, and I really enjoy it. I compare it to a theater experience because I usually consume content either on like my laptop or my phone, and it just wraps you in the film, just like a theater does. But I just want to speak to your point about how long you can stay in the headset. I was at Oculus Connect, and they showed us the CV1, which is extremely light, and it's very comfortable. And I did a demo called Medium. Do you guys know what Medium is? Have you heard of it? Okay, so it's a sculpting tool. Basically, you're using the touch controllers, and you're sculpting in 3D space. And the demo lasted 10 minutes, and it felt like 30 seconds. And the guy kept saying to me, you'll be an expert sculptor in no time. And I was like, that's impossible. I don't know how to sculpt. And he's like, no, you don't understand. You will spend hours in this app just sculpting, and you'll just lose track of time, and you'll just become an expert. Again, marketing hype, but it really, I really feel like that headset will change things in terms of how long people will stay.
And it's all about accessibility and adoption, right?
Yeah.
If people buy it and then people have this word of mouth, hey, this is great, it's actually comfortable, come over to my house, try it out.
Once there's a demand, then
you create the demand.
More companies are going to come up with different, more comfortable ideas.
And the last thing I want to say about it is as soon as the demos are over, they put you over to a survey, like an iPad survey, and the first question is, will you buy this?
Of course, yeah.
And I'm like, yes, I will buy this.
You got their demographic right. Yeah.
No, just speaking to what you just said, I think the one thing about that is that's, distinct is that it's interactive. So
And creative.
And creative. So you yourself are doing something. So you losing track of time. I don't know if that's, comparable to maybe watching movies. Ellie, you also did say you do watch movies in that format. So I don't know. I personally, I see it as VR is an amazing companion to a whole arsenal of media, so if you have the different ways of engaging with whatever brand or a story, and then having a series of short VR I think would be experiences, I think would be a good way to approach it.
Yeah, well, this comes back to the whole genre thing, right? Like, if you have like transmedia elements for a movie, let's say, then you might not want to make a whole movie in VR for that, right? So you'll have shorter pieces, but like the technology is there to allow you to stay in these sculpting experiences for hours and hours and hours. And the cool thing about that is you can actually learn a new skill while you're doing VR. So you can learn, you won't have the muscle memory, but that could be picked up over time, but you have the actual ability to sculpt now and take something from your mind and put it into reality, or virtual reality in this case. So yeah, I think, with when I tried the Vive out, that was crazy. And also, I normally get sick from the Oculus.
Yeah, the developer kit too is pretty bad with that.
It's so bad. And I move my head and I just instantly get nauseous, but not in the Vive. And I think it's just a result of better tech.
Do you think better tech and more exposure to it? Because I know when first color TV came out, people were complaining widespread that they were getting headaches from it because they weren't used to seeing in color from the light and stuff like that.
Right. No, I'd say it's just the tech, because I try the DK2 out even after all this exposure and I still feel sick.
But it's a good point that you make, because I remember at We Are Wearables, the VR edition, they were talking about that in the panel, and it hadn't occurred to me that exposure was also a factor in someone's, if you could get, less sensitive to, nausea and so forth. So until they mentioned that, I'm like, oh, maybe that's a thing. And then you mentioned it. So, but I don't know.
So is that a good or bad thing? Like, if it's technically bad for you to shine all these lights, like, when your mom was like, don't go too close to the TV, this is exactly what she's saying, where you're strapping it directly to your eyes and you have literally like just glasses beaming these lights directly onto your retina. Like, is that a good or bad thing? Because like, it could be like maybe evolution of the eyes. Like, we're taking in more light and now we're just more used to taking in more light.
I want a time machine so I can go with like
who doesn't
a bag of gear. No, just to be like, Mom, look at this. Don't put the TV too close to my eyes, huh? Well, it's the future.
Yeah. Well, actually, on that note, I think the lack of depth is something interesting, because when you focus on things in reality, things are actually distant. So I wonder if that will translate to distant objects in VR that are actually physically right next to your eyes.
Well, actually, I read a Harvard paper the other day where when we look at our cell phone or a computer screen, we have a fixed point of view, right? So if you're holding your phone like a couple inches from your eyes, like, you're always looking at that point of view. But with VR, you do have that depth. But apparently, it's different muscles than you actually use in reality. So it's better for you than looking at a phone, but it's obviously not as good for you as regular depth.
I think it just comes back to that time's going to tell. Like, everything's so new right now, no one can see the future. People are just going to use it, and things are going to go wrong, and things are going to go right, and it's just going to have to be trial and error. And
Yeah.
that's usually how it goes.
Yeah, like demoing to thousands of people, whether it's hot docs or, even 5Rs and different places. I'm pretty confident to say that, like, it's safe. It's just, there's going to be that one person, and then people are going to make rash, vast generalizations. But, but where I think what we talked about that is a legitimate, there's some legitimate concerns, like strapping something to your eyes and how your muscles deal with it. And I'm like, okay, cool. I get that. But when it's like, if someone just uses it as a scare tactic, or like something ridiculous, like, someone's like, no, we should just stick to horses. But I invented this thing called a car. It's like, I'm kind of freaked out. Well, be freaked out. But now, there's a certain amount of people that die from cars. There are a certain amount of people who die from selfies getting hit by cars. Right? Yeah. But I mean, we're going to live with that and then figure out
it's the new reality.
The safest way.
Status quo. Yeah, totally. Is there like an anti-VR?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Hater.
Yeah, VR hater.
Have you ever met someone that's like, nah, this sucks?
I think you see it sometimes in the media. Like when Palmer Luckey was on the Time cover, there was a lot of, lashback or?
Backlash?
Backlash on that.
Sorry, who is this?
Palmer Luckey was on the cover of Time.
Who's he?
The founder of
Oculus.
Oh, okay.
Inventor of Oculus.
Yeah, the inventor of Oculus. So basically, he was riding a dinosaur with the Oculus set on, and everyone thought he looked like an idiot. And there was this whole thing about how VR is not really cool. So I see things like that. If you're talking about like negative things about VR, I see that a lot.
And to the cool thing, I'm like, it's not cool.
No.
until you're freaking experiencing it, and then any demographic. I've shown my kids VR, and they're too young, okay? But I was like, they're like, oh my gosh. And, it doesn't translate me flailing my arms, but these kids were like freaking out. Then I showed my mom, and she's like, wow. It's like, finally, I understand what the hell you do. So it translates so many that the cool factor, that's out the window as soon as good content is put on your face.
I wrote a blog post about this because I started demoing VR in, I guess, beginning of May. And I learned a lot from May until now about how to demo VR. And I think it's an art form. I really, really, really do. I think you have to be really smooth. You have to, get people comfortable with it, get them acquainted to it. I think that is a big part of VR succeeding.
And I think that's UX in general, user experience. Because now we are dealing with actual experiences. And if they have a bad experience, they're not going to like VR as a whole. You need very good UX. It has to be very comfortable. People have to be comfortable with it, feel very, very calm and serene. And even with the UI, like, it needs to be something that people can just grab up and just know immediately how to use it. That's the whole idea of affordances. When you think of like something like a doorknob right now, when you go to get out of this room, you immediately know that when you turn this doorknob, the door's going to open, you're going to be able to leave. How do you translate that into VR when you have like something like controllers, like Wii nunchuck controllers, the Oculus Touch? It has to be just as seamless and like as real life, Like if you pick something up, you know what's going to happen. If you swipe to like another scene, you know what's going to happen. Not just like you tap something and something explodes and you freak out. Okay, what the hell happened? You want to be very comfortable with it. Where like you can just pick up a coffee cup as you would in real life. It has to be something like that.
Yeah, I think this goes back to the skeuomorphism too, because as an example, when Kwame and I did demoing at Hot Docs last summer, we had everyone sitting in swivel chairs and they were moving around, being flown in helicopters and sent to Mongolia to mountaintops, but they were swiveling around, and that was the UX. But if you take that a step further, you can have someone, let's say, doing a drag car demo, sitting in an actual seat with the wheel, and then the wheel would translate. So it would be a real object that translates into the VR experience. But for that context, it would be only it would be appropriate for that context only, rather. So, yeah.
But that being said, we still are at a point where you're invisible.
Right.
So, like...
Basically adding more senses to the experience of virtual reality. You want to have a touch and a feel. You want to have maybe your hands in there more.
But particularly seeing yourself.
Oh, it's...
Because if you think of it in a kind of philosophical sense, we're jumping into the computer, right? First we had like a little window looking into this virtual world, the web that we're all building together as human civilization. Then we put our eyes in so we can look around. Then, I don't know if you guys have tried the leap motion. When you see your hands, it's like, oh my God, I am in here. So once you get your full body in, you can walk around. Then you're like, I've jumped through the window. I'm in this virtual space now. That's literally what it is. It's like these two worlds that we have. We have our physical world, and we're building this virtual world where you can just do anything. You can just build anything. You can go into Unity right now, Unreal Engine. You can build your dreams. You can literally take what's in your mind out into this virtual reality, jump through physical reality into this virtual reality, jumping into your dreams.
I think what was, to speak on that point, I did the Oculus Touch toy box demo, and that was really crazy because you can see another person. They're an avatar, and they have a blue visor on, but like you can interact with them with your hands. Like they can pass you things. You can play ping pong. It was really immersive and very, surreal, to be honest with you.
Do you get that haptic feedback like every time you hit a ball?
No.
I'm surprised it wouldn't get like a little vibrate.
No.
A little vibration.
That's interesting.
No.
Yeah, I think the social aspect of VR is still undiscovered, but that sounds really cool, and I want to try that because
definitely the social aspect.
That's where we need to go with this.
I think certainly that's why Facebook bought Oculus.
This is their social network. Obviously, they see it as the next level of social.
It's the next computing platform that they're banking on.
Definitely. I mean, that besides augmented reality, there'll be different use cases for each. But I think also bringing the social aspect back into film is a very personal medium. Like, you watch movies next to people, but like when you get sucked into a movie, it's just you in there experiencing it, So like, will movies become social as well? Like, is that this interactive next phase of film, or will it still be like a one-person medium just kind of experiencing it?
Does that not take it into the game realm?
Yeah, but now we're kind of blurring the lines, right?
We can take it to wherever we want. In terms of film, when you look at really good games, like their selling point is their cutscenes and how well they can portray the game almost in a movie-like form. So I think they're getting pretty close. Now a lot of games you're seeing are making their own movies. Like the new World of Warcraft movie is coming out now.
Which also had a VR experience.
So I feel like the lines are getting blurred a bit and just whatever's getting produced.
Transmedia.
Transmedia.
What do you think is the biggest challenge right now with VR and producing a VR film? Would you say how to bring the story? Like, what would you say?
Like, what's the biggest drawback?
Well, I mean, I think it's very technical. I worked with a great developer. I was lucky to find one, but as a filmmaker, I think there's a big barrier for that reason. I think you need resources that are not just like picking up the camera and shooting.
They're comfortable with the technology and how it reacts.
Because now everyone has that. They can just pull out their phone and do a pretty good quality film with like a new iPhone 6. But I don't think everyone has that option right now with 360 film.
No, because you need a whole slew of applications that originally weren't designed for this medium, right? So video stitching was originally designed for panoramic photos, but now you apply it just frame by frame. People, when they started video stitching, were literally doing it frame by frame and batch stitching these massive amounts of images and then condensing it to a 360 video. But now you have software that streamlines that process. And so Unity right now is game development, but also people are using it to actually create these interactive video experiences. And Adobe Premiere and Creative Suite and After Effects and stuff, they're used for traditional filmmaking, but you can also apply those softwares for VR. So I think right now it is a technical thing for sure. And, if you have a budget on a film, that budget goes towards the production, the post-production. But in a VR experience, especially an interactive one, well, now you have to also budget for development and software and people who have these different skills. So it's really, really different for sure.
When I was at Kaleidoscope, someone asked this a similar question about like, how much would it cost to produce VR content, and the guy who ran the festival said it's about $10,000 a minute. He estimates. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you think about all the labor that goes into regular film, now add into that, you're having 6 times the amount of cameras, which, I mean, equipment cost, not a huge thing, but then there's also data management, and then making sure everything fits together. And then in post, you need people who know how to specifically work with 360 videos, how to stitch videos, how to apply effects into a 360 sphere. And then,
that's basically knowing a game engine.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, again, with Palmer Luckey, I watched a video with him in Unreal Engine saying that the best people equipped to make VR right now are game developers. They have the skill set required, and they have the knowledge and the domain knowledge to actually do these kind of things. But do you think that price will actually come down once like stitching isn't a factor and there's these cameras that stitch for you, and it's basically just using one camera now because it's just spherically taking one entire image rather than these 6 images that someone else needs to go and stitch? Like that's someone you have to pay for that you can cut later on.
I think certainly the price will potentially come down, but it depends what quality you're looking for. So look at movies. You could get someone who's, whatever, fresh out of or in school and say, I'll give you like $1,000 to do this movie, but you can pay millions of dollars for a movie. Mm-hmm. It depends on what you really want, and as far as quality and content.
Mm-hmm. It'll be more accessible to the average person. They'll pull out their iPhone, whatever, with the 360 capabilities, but you won't get the same level of quality as like Kwame was saying. And so with stitching, I think it's something that you can have one camera for, like the bubble cam. And I argue this a lot, but I don't think manual stitching will go away. It might change how it's done, but you still have to, at least with flat, medium, and even 360, like it might change with the light ray technology, but as it stands right now, you have your foreground and your background in the stitch. And so things that are closer to the camera have different parallax than things that are far away from the camera. And so when you're stitching things together, you have to keep that in mind, because the software doesn't know what's in front and what's behind. It just sees pixels and tries to automatically do it. So something like the bubble cam will automatically create these weird ghosting issues. And so that's something you just can't avoid right now.
I agree, and that's something only a human can go in with the creative mind to see, oh, wait, that doesn't look right. We need to fix that. Where the computer's like, no, it's fine, bro. Just keep going. But you're like, no.
Yeah.
This doesn't fly.
So we backed the Sphericam, and that's a 6 lens setup in a single camera. And the idea behind that was it's auto stitching, or if you shoot at 60 frames, you use a utility that stitches it all together. So I'm curious to see if it works.
Yeah, me too. And if it does, then amazing.
Yeah.
Less work in the post.
Yeah. And then there's more time for being a creative filmmaker or whatever.
And sorry, have you tried, because you're a stitcher, have you tried the Ricoh Theta?
No.
No?
Oh, no, yes, I have. Yeah.
How is that?
It works. It's really good because it has 2 lenses. And so it captures 180 degrees on each lens. And it's just this tiny handheld. It looks like an Apple remote, basically. And you hit the button and it takes this picture and stitches it together. And from what I saw, like I didn't try to put it into weird situations. I just had it in regular situations. It works. And then you have this relatively well-stitched image. I'm sure there are ways to break it and put it in between things that are close together or something that it's just not designed for, but for the average user, I think it's great. And as a filmmaker, you can take it to a location, set it up, and then get an instant idea of what that would look like from your rig. So you don't have to set things up. You can just go location scouting and then take these pictures and then view them in a Gear VR after the fact to plan for your filming.
So you'd say that's good for prototyping and just internal
Totally.
stuff, but you wouldn't use that for external.
What do you mean by external?
For the actual production, like the finished final product.
Well, it's basically a camera, so you probably could. You just have to find the application for it.
Would you say the quality, like the actual picture, is the biggest thing, or the immersion of it, like how well it seems to flow, is the best selling point for a VR experience? Like if you're like, I really want to pick up this movie, would you be like, because Pixar made it and I know the animation's going to be top notch, or you'd be like, I've seen the reviews on here and it says this is the scariest thing there is on VR, and it's more like the immersion of it? Or would you say all of those are a factor? It needs high quality for it to be immersive.
So as far as the pixelated, like, it's not that good yet.
No,
but people love it. So I would say it is the immersion.
Yeah.
Did you say the experience right now?
It's the
Because when you look at some of the biggest games that are out there, like Minecraft, I'm going to pander to that because it doesn't look that good. It's the play, it's the immersion in the game that people like.
It's a fun game.
Yeah. So I feel like, is VR going to have a place with that where it doesn't really matter how high the quality gets?
But isn't Minecraft the style? Like,
Yeah.
people love the style.
Stylistic choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that it doesn't look good. I think it's just the style.
The styling of it?
Of Minecraft. A lot of people don't like VR. My experience is people don't like, if it's too low res, they complain.
Yeah, well, that's like film. Like, you can watch like kind of low res and there can be some mess ups, but like you can forgive that. One thing you cannot forgive is audio, bad audio. So have you guys dabbled in audio?
Yeah, well, we dabbled in audio.
Yeah, you and I did some tests.
Yeah, which is still an experiment it'll come together. But in theory, yeah, like I think at least hearing from people who have done spatial audio, it is different, but it's not impossible. It's just using a game engine like you would in a regular game and then just spatially placing the sounds in space, and then let's say a character walks by, you have to animate the sound as the person walks by. So it's just changing your mindset a bit, but the actual audio recording is the same.
As somebody who like doesn't know anything about VR, and you wanted to tell them, okay, VR maybe not looks that good, but as someone who's gone and experienced VR, the immersion of it is worth sitting through and looking at, even if it is very pixelated or something like that. Because some people I know, they're like, oh, if it's not 720p, it's not worth my time. And when they're watching and loading YouTube videos, if it doesn't have the option to put it in a higher resolution, they just skip the video and they don't even have that viewing experience.
For someone who doesn't know VR, I'd just be like, put it on your face, check it out, because they're not going to be like, oh, the pixels for the first time. Maybe if they check it out a few times and they're being really analytical, they'll be like, oh, I noticed that it's not as good as, but just for what it is, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And even at Hot Docs, no one was complaining when they had it on their face. How many people did we show? 1,400, something like that? Yeah, we had zero negative feedback. Only after probing people for like, oh, what would you change? Then they're like, you know what? The pixels were kind of obvious. That's it, really.
Can I speak to that? Was the hot dogs thing free?
It was free, yeah.
Okay. So when it all changes when it's a paid experience.
Yeah, that's true.
Did anyone, like at Kaleidoscope, did anyone have any feedback?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't talk to... I talked to more people at Fivers than Kaleidoscope. The feedback from Kaleidoscope was that people couldn't see the experiences because there were too many... The lineups were too deep. Right? Even though they had a ton of headsets. Fivers, there was less headsets and less people. So I got to interact, and it was over 2 days, and it was a much longer time period. I think Fivers was like 8 hours, where Kaleidoscope was only 4. Okay, so yeah, I think people do complain though about pixels, but we can't overlook audio. It's super important in VR.
What did you guys do for audio?
So we did binaural audio, so it's you hear the world in 360. It was really important because in our film you're in the actor's body, so it was part of the film that you wanted to feel like you were in the room with them. We used a very inexpensive setup where we used a small H1, Zoom H1. It's like under $100, and roll-in microphones, which with the actors put in their ear, and they're like headphones, and they were like $120. So it was a really simple and very immersive setup. People felt it was good, but like I think binaural audio is really key for VR.
I think with yours, Ellie, it was especially effective, the binaural audio, because it's the first person point of view. So as they turn, you in effect turn your head as well. So it does add the instant 3D immersion as opposed to something that might be 360, whereas binaural might not work as well. But I think for that application, like, you nailed it. It's perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I with 360, how to guide people's focus is definitely a part of what people are trying to learn, So, Ellie, you basically guided people with, this is the space. You get that really it's obvious that you should be looking there in that, focused area or that delimited area. However, us being really interested in the full 360, it's like, how do you really make someone look over there with that audio? I think that's an area worth, exploring. And then also, I think there's like subject matter, like if there's an audio cue and then something's happening and then, but you could experience it two ways potentially. I think that's really an interesting.
I think when you look at movies that exist now, there is audio cues. Whenever there's an action scene or something really depressing is happening, the music changes throughout the movie. So I think if you're having a 360 experience, audio cues would definitely be one of the good ways to draw focus to a certain area, or even light and exposure. You could highlight certain areas or darken others because you're like, you want to be focusing on this area because this is where the action and plot is going to be furthered, not in the background somewhere staring at no one.
Hey, was that one Insidious? That really freaky. Oh, it scared the shit out of me, by the way. But they did just what you're saying in terms of like there are these dark areas, and you're like, oh, I don't need to look there. And then there's like the places where lights, they definitely use that.
Yeah, if you hear a bunch of people having a fight behind you and you're looking at a tree, you might want to turn around.
Yeah.
You're using it wrong.
But those impulses might even come naturally because when you're sitting in a room or you're walking around, when you hear things, you're like, oh, I thought I heard my name, or is there a car coming? Like, it draws your attention almost instantaneously.
But also you tune out a lot of stuff in your environment. So, if you're freaking out over like, oh, I can see everything, this is the first time I've experienced 360, you might not pay attention to the car rolling up that cues you to look over there, which is why I think something like Liquid Cinema, which is still in beta right now, but basically every time they do a cut, the center point can be forced. So if you're looking over here, and then traditionally right now, if you do a cut, you'll be looking at this point in the new scene. But the way this software works is that it'll actually readjust the focal point to where you're looking in that moment. So the director does have a little more control in showing you, hey, this is what you should look at in this scene, and then look around if you want to outside of that.
Sorry, what's Liquid Cinema?
It's software that's being designed by Deep in Toronto here, and it's still under development, but the goal is to be able to give the director more freedom to show the audience what they need to see.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
It's like a software tool set.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a more guided version of VR. So
Yeah.
it's drawing your focus forcefully rather than just like, you can look here because something's going to happen. It's like, you're looking here now.
Yeah.
But you still have that 360 immersion.
Yeah.
Braeden, one thing that you brought up that I find like really interesting is the music in these films, right? Like right now in movies, like there's like an underlying soundtrack going on. Like if something's creepy, it's creepy because of music. But in this 360 world where like you're supposed to be the character and it's supposed to be natural, would that be weird to have a soundtrack of your life? Or is it just like, well, it's media, like there's going to be music in it? Or would you rather just cut the music and just have two people talking in like in a space with no music at all?
In our film, we didn't know how to integrate stereo and binaural at the same time. And I think what you get is phasing issues. So we just ignored the music. We definitely talked about it as a...
Because that could guide people, as you said, with regular film, Braeden.
Yeah. That'd be interesting if you had a radio just in the background playing so that it would be in the environment.
Yeah. As much as stuff as you can put in the environment, I totally agree. That would be cool.
Yeah, and it really comes down to set design too. And when you're building your 360 environment, like if you're doing a doc, you can't really control it. But if you're doing a film narrative, then you absolutely have to take advantage of things like that.
Yeah. Is there anything you guys wanted to absolutely bring up and discuss? Like anything you thought we missed?
No, I mean, I just think that it's a great opportunity for creators to go out and make VR content now. It's the Wild West, and there are no mistakes. Like everyone's just creating their own language, and I think people should try it.
Yeah, send a shout out to Think Tank. It was a great opportunity to be here and learn a lot, hang out with you guys.
I think what we're doing here is really cool because part of making VR mainstream is getting people to know about it. And so podcasts like this is great. Events like Fivers and Kaleidoscope and We Are Wearables is great because the more that people know about it, the more that filmmakers and creatives and VR enthusiasts can really dig at and discover the medium. So you guys are doing a good thing. Thanks.
There you go. Go out there, go to some events, listen to our podcast. is what.
Overall, just
think about it.
Yeah.
Think about what you would do if you want to make a film. If you have an idea, you can reach us out on Twitter at thinktankcast. If you have an idea for a sweet VR film, let us know. Well, Kwame, Ellie, Braeden, thank you so much for being on here, and let's do it again sometime.
Cheers,
Absolutely.
boys.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this talk and want to check out more, go to our website at thinktankcast.com and subscribe with your email so we can send you all of the latest episodes, news, and updates.
Also, on our
right to your
website, there will be
inbox.
show notes for this episode, some links to the things that we talked about, and more detailed information on our guests. If you want to see the video of this episode, it'll be on our YouTube channel, which is also linked on our website.
And if you want to keep in touch, we're on social media. Check us out on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're at thinktankcast on pretty much everything, so you can find us on the web. And all of these details, again, will be linked to our website at thinktankcast.com. Hope to hear from you guys soon.
Amplified pattern recognition.
Why does the universe exist? We're about 5 Einsteins away from